Most defendants walk into the courtroom hoping to be found innocent. Weston Cage walked in like he was hoping to be exorcised. He is the son of Nicolas Cage, Hollywood's wildest, most unpredictable actor. And the apple didn't fall far from the tree. It fell into a volcano. Weston swept down the aisle wearing a floor-length black leather trench coat, despite it being 85 degrees outside. He had long, raven-black hair covering half his face, heavy black eyeliner, and silver rings on every finger. He didn't look at the bailiff. He stared intensely at the invisible spirits in the air. "Mr. Cage," I said, "please approach the bench and stop glaring at the stenographer. You are making her nervous." Weston turned his gaze to me. His eyes were wide, unblinking. "I am not glaring, Your Honor," Weston declaimed. His voice was deep, gravelly, and extremely loud. "I am perceiving her aura. It is beige." "We are not here to discuss auras," I said, putting on my glasses. "Case number 666. Wait, strike that. Case number 667. Charges: malicious destruction of public property, disturbing the peace, and sonic assault." I opened the file. It contained photos of shattered glass and terrified librarians. "The report states that yesterday, at high noon, you entered the rare books wing of the Providence Public Library." "I sought the codex," Weston interrupted, raising a gloved hand. "The ancient text called to me. I needed to inhale their wisdom." "You didn't inhale anything," I corrected. "You screamed. The report says you stood in the middle of the reading room and unleashed a death metal growl that lasted for 45 seconds. "It was a frequency of awakening," Weston shouted, standing up. "I was trying to shatter the silence. Knowledge must be loud. It must scream." "Well, you shattered the silence, all right," I said, "and you also shattered 3 glass display cases containing first edition manuscripts. The vibration of your voice was so loud it set off the seismic sensors in the basement. You terrified a group of elementary school children who were there for story time," I added sternly. "They were reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar. They left crying because they thought a demon had entered the building." "Children have open minds," Weston scoffed. "They saw the raw power of the void. I gave them a gift. I showed them the cage. I stared at him. He was theatrical. He was intense. He was completely exhausting. He treated real life like a scene from Ghost Rider." "Mr. Cage," I said, "a library is a place of sanctuary. It is a place of silence. You violated that silence with your ego. You think because your father steals the Declaration of Independence in movies, you can destroy a library in real life?" "I am an artist of chaos," Weston declared, spreading his arms like bat wings. "I cannot be contained by whispers." "Oh, you will be contained," I promised. "You like chaos? You like loud noises? You like big dramatic movements?" "Officer Quinn," I signaled the bailiff, "Mr. Cage needs to learn that true power isn't about screaming. It's about control. Lock the doors. I am sending him to a place where a single scream is a crime punishable by death. Plant death." I signaled to Officer Martinez. The courtroom lights died out instantly, casting long noir-like shadows across the room, an atmosphere Weston seemed to enjoy a little too much. "You call it an awakening," I said to the dark silhouette of the defendant. "The library board calls it a catastrophic acoustic event. Let's watch." The screen flickered on. It was high-definition security footage from the H.P. Lovecraft Rare Books wing. The timestamp was 12 p.m. The room was a cathedral of silence. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. An elderly librarian, Mrs. Higgins, was carefully turning the page of a 400-year-old manuscript with white gloves. In the corner, a group of 6-year-olds sat in a circle on a rug, listening to a teacher read The Very Hungry Caterpillar. It was peaceful. It was perfect. Then the doors swung open. Weston strode in. On the video, he looked like a dark wizard invading the Shire. His black leather trench coat billowed behind him, knocking over a display of bookmarks. His heavy combat boots squeaked loudly on the polished marble floor. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Mrs. Higgins looked up and put a finger to her lips. "Shh," she mouthed. Weston didn't shh. He walked to the exact center of the room, right under the domed ceiling. He closed his eyes. He spread his legs in a wide power stance. He threw his head back, his long black hair whipping around. You could see his chest expand. He was inhaling so much air he looked like he was about to explode. Then the audio kicked in. It wasn't a shout. It was a guttural demonic roar that sounded like a jet engine grinding gravel. "Ra!" The sound on the video was distorted because it maxed out the microphone's limiters. The reaction was instant physics. The teacher dropped the caterpillar book. The children covered their ears and started wailing, their mouths open in silent screams under the noise of Weston. But the real damage was to the glass. The rare book's wing is lined with glass display cases. As Weston hit a specific low-frequency note, the glass began to vibrate. You could see the reflections shaking. Crack. The case to his left shattered. Shards of safety glass rained down on a first edition of Moby Dick. Smash. The case to his right exploded. Weston didn't stop. He held the note for a full 45 seconds. Veins bulged in his neck. His face turned purple. He looked like he was trying to summon a dragon. When he finally ran out of breath, the silence that followed was heavy. Broken glass covered the floor. Mrs. Higgins was hiding under her desk. Weston opened his eyes, looked at the destruction, and nodded solemnly to the security camera. "You're welcome," he whispered on the tape. The video ended. The lights came back on. The courtroom was dead silent. Even the bailiff looked a little rattled. I turned to Weston. He was beaming. He looked proud. "The resonance," Weston noted, pointing to the blank screen. "Did you see the glass submit? The frequency was pure. I found the resonant frequency of the room. You destroyed $50,000 worth of museum-grade glass," I shouted, slamming my hand down, "and you nearly gave Mrs. Higgins a stroke." "Mrs. Higgins was stagnant," Weston countered, his voice booming. "She needed to be shaken. I brought energy into a dead room." "It is a library, Weston," I yelled back. "It is supposed to be dead quiet. That is the point. You think this makes you deep? You think this makes you an artist?" I picked up a photo of the terrified children. "Look at these faces. These kids didn't see an artist. They saw a monster. You scared a 6-year-old girl so bad she dropped her juice box on a carpet from 1920. "I was teaching them about the darkness," Weston said, flipping his hair back. "The world is loud. They must learn to scream back." "They are reading about a caterpillar who eats plums," I said. "They don't need to scream back. They need to learn the days of the week." I leaned back, studying him. "You are just like your father in the worst ways," I observed. "I love Nicolas Cage. But do you know why his cage rage works in movies?" Weston leaned in. "Because he channels the shamanic energy? Because the director yells, 'Cut,'" I said. "Because it is a controlled environment. Because after he screams, he goes home and pays his taxes." "You don't have a cut button, Weston. You are screaming in a world that is trying to think." "You claim you have too much energy?" I asked. "You claim you need to release the beast?" "The beast must feed," Weston growled dramatically. "Well, the beast is going on a diet," I said. I opened the sentencing book. I flipped past community service and trash pickup. I needed something psychological. "I have found the perfect place for you. It is a place of nature, a place of intense, unbearable quiet." "The Providence Botanical Gardens," I announced. "Specifically, the Zen Bonsai Pavilion." Weston looked confused. "Plants? I like plants. They are silent observers. I can scream at them. They will understand." "No," I smiled, a dangerous glint in my eye. "You will not scream. You will not growl. If you raise your voice above a whisper, you will be ejected. You are going to be a pruner. Do you know what a bonsai tree is, Weston? It is a tree that has been tortured into perfection for 300 years. It is fragile. One wrong cut, and it dies. One sudden movement, and you snap a branch that took a century to grow. "I am giving you a pair of scissors," I said. "Tiny scissors, the size of a toothpick. You are going to trim the microscopic leaves off a 200-year-old juniper tree. It requires breath control. It requires a steady hand. And most importantly," I leaned over the bench, "it requires you to shut up. Officer Quinn," I pointed to the door, "take the Lord of War to the garden, and if he tries to heavy metal growl at the ficus, bring him back to me." Officer Quinn approached the bench, dragging the gray plastic bin. It scraped loudly against the floor, breaking the silence Weston claimed to hate. "The coat," Quinn ordered. Weston clutched the lapels of his floor-length black leather trench coat. "This is not a coat," Weston whispered intensely. "This is my shadow. It protects my spirit from the harsh radiation of the sun. Without it, I am exposed." "You are in a greenhouse," I reminded him. "The temperature is 85 degrees, with 90% humidity. If you wear that leather coat, you will pass out from heat stroke in 10 minutes, and when you fall, you will crush the azaleas. Take it off." Weston looked at the fluorescent lights like they were burning him. Slowly, dramatically, he slid the heavy coat off his shoulders. It hit the bin with a heavy thud, like a dead body. Underneath, he was wearing a black mesh shirt and leather wristbands with spikes. The wristbands, too, I added. Those spikes are dangerous. You are hugging trees, not fighting orcs. Weston sighed, unbuckling the spike cuffs. He dropped them. Clank, clank. And the rings, I pointed to his hands. He had a large silver skull ring on almost every finger. These are my talismans, Weston protested, holding up his heavy hands. They channel the earth energy. They ground me. They are brass knuckles, I said. You are going to be handling a pair of scissors the size of a hummingbird's beak. You cannot have metal skulls smashing into the branches. Take them off. One by one, Weston pulled off the rings. It took a while. When he was done, his hands looked pale and surprisingly normal. He looked at them as if they didn't belong to him. I feel light, Weston murmured, horrified. I feel unanchored. The gravity is wrong. That is called dexterity, I said. Officer Quinn, the uniform. Quinn reached into the bag marked Botanical Gardens. He didn't pull out a black robe. He pulled out a beige canvas gardener's apron with a sunflower logo embroidered on the chest. Put it over the mesh, I ordered. Weston touched the beige fabric. Earth tones, he spat. The color of mediocrity. It sucks the soul out of the room. It's the color of dirt, I said, which you are about to get very familiar with. Put it on. Weston tied the apron. The transformation was jarring. He looked like a goth teenager who had been forced to help his grandma in the yard. The sunflower on his chest looked ironically cheerful next to his eyeliner. And now, I said, reaching into my drawer, your weapon. Weston's eyes lit up. A scythe? He asked hopefully. A machete to hack the undergrowth? No, I said. I pulled out a pair of bonsai shears. They were tiny. The blades were barely an inch long. They looked like scissors for a doll. These, I said, holding them up. Weston squinted. What is that? Is that a joke? I cannot wield that. My hands are made for power chords, not tweezing. Your hands are made for whatever you train them for, I said. I tossed the tiny scissors to him. He caught them. They looked ridiculous in his large, pale hand. Here is the rule, Weston, I said, leaning forward. You are going to prune the old master. It is a juniper tree that has been alive since 1850. It has survived wars, storms, and droughts. If you cut the wrong branch, if you sneeze and snip a bud, you ruin 170 years of history. You have to be slower than a snail. You have to be quieter than a shadow. Officer Quinn, I pointed to the door. Take him to the Zen Pavilion. Take his boots, too. He needs to be in socks. We can't have him squeaking. Weston looked down at his combat boots, then at the tiny scissors. Silence is the loudest scream, Weston whispered, trying to find a philosophical angle. Just cut the dead leaves, Weston, I said, and don't scare the koi fish. The Zen Pavilion was a world away from the chaos of the library. It was humid, smelling of damp earth and moss. There was no sound except for the trickle of a bamboo water fountain. Drip, drip, drip. I walked in to check on my new apprentice. Weston was sitting on a small wooden stool. He looked like a giant melting crow. His black eyeliner was running down his cheeks in sweaty streaks. The sunflower apron was stained with soil. He was barefoot, his combat boots left at the door. He was staring at the old master, the 170-year-old juniper bonsai. Its trunk was twisted, white and gnarled, looking like a skeleton rising from the pot. Weston held the tiny scissors. His hand was trembling. He hovered over a single yellow leaf. He pulled back. He hovered again. He looked like he was diffusing a nuclear bomb. Breathe, Weston, I whispered from the doorway. Weston jumped, nearly dropping the shears. Judge, he hissed, do not startle the entity. It is sensing my fear. It's a tree, I said, walking over. It senses light and water. How is the pruning going? It is agonizing, Weston admitted, his voice a low rumble. I want to rip it. I want to tear the dead wood. My spirit wants to thrash. But if I move too fast, he pointed to a tiny, delicate branch. I kill the aesthetic. It demands submission. That is the point, I said. You have been screaming at the world to look at you. This tree doesn't care about you. You have to look at it. Weston leaned in close to the twisted trunk. It is gnarly, though, Weston whispered, a spark of fascination in his eyes. Look at the bark. It looks like it has been tortured. It looks like a soul trapped in wood. It's called dead wood styling, I explained. The tree sacrifices parts of itself to survive the harsh winters. It twists in the wind, but it doesn't break. Weston stared at the tree with new respect. It has suffered, Weston noted. It is metal. It is extremely metal, I agreed. It has survived storms that would snap a telephone pole, and it did it without making a sound. You think power is loud, Weston, but look at this. This is 200 years of silent struggle. That is real power. Endurance. Weston nodded slowly. He wiped the sweat eyeliner mixture from his chin. Silence is heavy, he said. He turned back to the tree. He took a deep breath. He didn't growl. He didn't shake. He focused all that manic Cage energy into the tip of his index finger. Snip. A single dead leaf fell onto the moss. It was a perfect cut. Whoa, Weston whispered. I felt that. A release. Micro-chaos. Keep going, I said. You have 300 more leaves to go. I watched him for a moment longer. The man who tried to shatter a library with his voice was now the quietest thing in the room. He wasn't suppressed. He was focused. The beast was finally doing something useful. I walked back to the studio, leaving him to his silent conversation with the ancient wood. I sat down to deliver the final verdict of our series. We live in a loud world, I said to the camera. We have people screaming for attention on social media, in the streets, and even in libraries. We think that if we are not heard, we do not exist. But the strongest things in this world are often the quietest. A tree doesn't scream to grow. A foundation doesn't shout to hold up a building. True power isn't about how much glass you can break. It's about how much patience you can hold. Sometimes you have to lower your volume to raise your value. And remember, the story you just watched is a fictional drama created for educational purposes. While we used real names and personas like Weston Cage to illustrate the moral point, this specific event did not happen. But the lesson remains: respect the silence and handle nature with care. I'm Judge Frank Caprio.